Potomac River is one of the dirtiest rivers in the United States. At least it was. Though you could still neither swim nor fish in this river, the Potomac is in the middle of a major comeback. But this trend is tenuous. In 1965, President Lyndon Baines Johnson called the river absolutely disgraceful. Being the river upon which sits the capital of the United States, he felt it ought to be a symbol of beauty and a model for all the nation's rivers. Since then, the Potomac has recovered in a major way compared to its old self, but there is still much to go. This is the story of the Potomac and pollution, from headwaters to mouth, from past to present. Like all great stories, ours starts at the most likely of places, at the beginning. Our journey began in the mountains of Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia on their border. I'm here at what is considered to be the Potomac River's main source and headwaters, Fairfax Stone State Park in West Virginia. This stone marks the location of a small spring that begins the North Branch Potomac River. At this stage, the water is incredibly pure, coming straight out of an underground aquifer. And if you don't know what an aquifer is an underground layer of permeable rock or sediment that is saturated. It holds and transmits groundwater. And there are two kinds of aquifers. One is the unconfined aquifer, which is open to the atmosphere and has a shifting water table. And two is the confined aquifer, which is sealed in by impermeable rock and is pressurized. Like what is happening at Fairfax Stone, an aquifer can feed a spring when a confined aquifer has a natural outlet to the Earth's surface, and this pressure differential pushes that water to that opening. Back to the stone. So, what happens to this water on its 400-mile journey? How does pure spring water turn into non-potable, unswimmable filth? Let's find out together. Come along. It only gets a lot bigger from here. Well, here we are. This is the place where the north and south branches of the Potomac River meet, at Potomac Forks, just behind that bend behind me right over there. From here, the river traces a familiar track eastward, going past Harper's Ferry, Washington, D.C., and ultimately out into the Chesapeake Bay. We'll visit some of those places later, but for now, we're not there quite yet. At this point, the river is actually still quite pure. It's mainly untouched by its four main sources of pollution: industrial pollution, wastewater effluents, agricultural runoff, and urban runoff. I'll let my guy back in the adventure room at home base explain a little bit more about what each of those are. Over to you. Thanks, me. Industrial pollution is pretty self-explanatory. It is the introduction of harmful chemicals, waste, and heat from factories and other sources into rivers, degrading water quality and threatening aquatic life and human health. Wastewater effluent is wastewater discharged from treatment facilities, and these can be either treated, partially treated, or even untreated. Agricultural runoff has to do with pesticides, herbicides, animal waste, sediment, and more. These three are actually part of an ongoing success story for the Potomac, as they are in steady decline year by year. Of course, in spite of this, there is still plenty going into the river, more than is healthy or safe. And then there's a fourth source of pollution: urban runoff. Urban runoff is when rainfall or snowmelt flows across things like streets, roofs, and other impermeable surfaces in urban environments that do not absorb water. The water here carries things like oil, chemicals, waste, and sediments into rivers. This is the only growing source of pollution to the Potomac, but we'll talk more about this later. For now, let's go back to the river. Thank you for that. As we were saying, at this point, there's not a lot of those pollutants that have entered the river. However, there actually is probably more than you might think, and that's because a river is a lot more than a single stream. Of course, you have the example of, this is the South Branch of the Potomac River right behind me here, and just on the other side of those trees over there is the North Branch. They meet up, so that's already two big rivers right there, right? Yeah. Not only this, though, a river has countless tributaries that feed into it along its course. And what that means is that they carry all the water as well as anything else they might have picked up along the way into that river. Out here, you don't have a lot of industry, right? You don't have a lot of wastewater probably going in. There's not a lot of developments. There's not going to be much urban runoff. But this is farm country. So you have a lot of, you guessed it, agricultural runoff. And what that can be is a lot of different things. Animal waste is a really big one, probably worse than you might even think, as well as any pesticides and herbicides and things going on the crop that then wash into the water. Now, it's not too bad at this point, like we were saying, but it is actually going to get a lot worse. Come along and let's see for ourselves. Even though you might not want to see, in a way, I think it's important that, yeah. This is almost comical, man. I mean, I have to assume it's because there was like a bit of a recent storm. A lot of this got washed onto the shoreline. But even so, I mean, it's mixed in with a bunch of like commonplace river debris. So all that means is that this is basically just revealing and showing how much trash is just in the river anyway. Listen, I wouldn't want to swim with all this garbage anyway. This isn't even accounting for all the pollution that we can't see, all those other pervasive forms of pollution that we've been talking about. When you have a storm like this, especially if the stormwater system is not doing its job properly, you're gonna get a lot of urban runoff. This whole town, city area behind me, everything that is not handled properly by the sewage system is going to wash into this river directly. And that's why that is the only form of pollution in the Potomac River that is still growing. And this beach is just one of several, any location around the Washington, D.C. area and downriver that you could be looking at to see stuff like this. Now, I will say choosing this location to shoot here was slightly strategic because we are downstream from the Anacostia River and where the Anacostia River feeds into the Potomac River. Now, the Anacostia River is truly disgustingly polluted. That river is surrounded by communities that are historically black and underprivileged areas that are disproportionately affected by pollution and things like environmental degradation. It's terrible to see things like this happen to rivers like the Anacostia and communities like that, and feed into the Potomac and cause larger problems for all the surrounding communities downstream there as well. And friends like these poor little duckies here as well. It's not just the fish that get affected. These guys, if they try and eat things from the river, they sit around here, they might actually try and eat some of this garbage. It's not good. Well, I'd say it's time to move down to further down the river where things have hopefully improved a little by then, because this area is sufficiently depressing me. Yeah, anyway, let's move on. So we have gone all the way from the headwaters at Fairfax Stone State Park, past the forks, the area in which much of the agricultural runoff is entering the river, past DC, where the bulk of the industrial pollution, wastewater effluescence, and crucially, urban runoff is entering the river. And now we find ourselves here at Point Lookout, the place at which the Potomac River enters the Chesapeake Bay. What a journey we've been on. We've gotten to see how that pure spring water turns into something that you can't even swim in. And now, Here, at the end of that journey, that polluted water is being spat out into the Chesapeake Bay, one of the most significant bays on the planet. Polluted water like this causes damage to aquatic ecosystems and affects the health and quality of the mountains and mountains of food that people consume in Maryland, Virginia, Delaware, Washington, D.C., and other places. Not only that, but after it is in the Chesapeake, this polluted water will enter the ocean and cause further damage there. Like we mentioned earlier, the Potomac is in the middle of a major recovery. As of right now, the river's health is graded as a B, up from a D just 14 years ago in 2011. That is a major increase in a relatively short period of time. Decades of work have curbed industrial and agricultural pollution, including shifts in policy and practice, as well as improved wastewater treatment. But there is no guarantee that things keep moving in this direction. For example, as we know, urban runoff is actually increasing as a source of pollution to the river. All that means is that we need to clean up our communities. If the urban environments where this polluted water is coming from were not so dirty, we would not have so great of an issue. The degradation of these communities is the reason for the increase in urban runoff. By cleaning our home, we can further protect ourselves and the shared ecosystems connected through the waterways of our planet. Right now, the state of our nation's environment is deeply threatened. Now more than ever, it is vital that you step up to do something in support of whatever issue you may be passionate about. If you care about the health of the Potomac River and live in this region, reach out to your representative, organize or participate in local cleanup efforts, or donate to organizations like the Potomac Conservancy. I know it is easy to feel helpless as an individual, but trust me, there are things that you can do. But now, here, just as we've reached the end of our river, so too have we reached the end of our journey. Well, there you have it. We saw the journey of water from the Potomac River all the way from the headwaters at Fairfax Stone down to the mouth going into the Chesapeake Bay. And what a journey it was, and I genuinely hope that you learned something. I hope you enjoyed, I hope you had fun, and I hope you had something to take away from it. Maybe you learned more about how rivers work in general. Maybe you learn more about the different sources of pollution to rivers and what that actually means. Even if it's not the Potomac that you care about or that you live nearby, this river can be seen as a microcosm where you can look at this to analyze and understand different issues that affect rivers all over the country and across the world. Anyway, above all, I hope you had fun. I hope you stick around, and I'm going to be doing a lot more stuff, so I will hopefully see you there and whatnot. In the meantime, take care, and I will see you next time.